Doctors. I get a lot of questions about doctors. And I want to start this video by saying all doctors are not created equal. There are amazing physicians out there that are definitely to be trusted and that don't make legal liability their number one priority. I had an amazing OBGYN that attended my delivery with my son. I would trust her with my life. I have worked with other amazing doctors who are so intuitive and caring. So again, this video is not at all to say that you can't trust your doctors or that what I'm saying includes all doctors out there. But with that said, what a lot of doctors won't tell you is that thoughts of legal liability are guiding their decisions and what they're telling you. Again, not all doctors are guided by this, but I can say that all doctors are afraid of being sued. It's something that happens a lot, and they are rightly nervous about that. And of course, they want to avoid that as often as possible, and rightly so. But where that can become tricky is when not being sued is a higher priority than helping you to have the type of birth that you want to have. And I do believe that everyone does have the goal of having a healthy mom and baby, but again, sometimes that worry over whether or not they could get sued has way too much of an influence over a doctor's decisions and what they're recommending you to do. So with that said, there's a few different things that you can do to make sure that this doesn't negatively impact your birth experience. Number one, if you don't have any special circumstances, if you are having a very normal, happy, healthy birth, I really recommend considering a midwife. If you want, you could have a midwife that comes to your home. There's also amazing birth centers, only if you're comfortable with that. Some women want to be in the hospital. I totally get that. That's how I felt with my son. I'll probably have a home birth the next time, but my experience in the hospital really was totally fine. But that's one thing to consider, because midwives, all of their training is just about babies and helping to get that baby safely, calmly out of you. Doctors, on the other hand, are trained for all sorts of stuff, but they're usually not really trained in how to support an unmedicated birth. Now, if you know that you want an epidural, you want Pitocin, which is totally fine, or even if you want a planned C-section, of course you need a doctor and you need to be in the hospital and they're trained to take care of you. But if you're somebody that wants an unmedicated birth, again, doctors and even some nurses, they don't really know what to do with you. It's like, wait, but we can't use any of our training to help you. Like, can we please offer you this menu of interventions? Like, please choose something. They get confused by you saying, no, I don't want anything. So beyond the choosing a midwife thing, if you decide, nope, I want a doctor, I want to be in the hospital, which again, that's the choice I made. I totally get it. You need to ask a lot of questions. If the doctor is, say, recommending that they induce you, ask why. Keep asking why until you feel like you've had a solid answer. And then even beyond that, I recommend doing your own research and finding, relevant studies. And there is a lot out there, Cochrane reviews, all sorts of research that talks about all different types of pregnancy circumstances, interventions, the pros, the cons. I really recommend putting in the research if you have the time. If you have the time to do it. I know sometimes when we're in the midst of birth and we have to make a choice, sometimes we don't have time to do all of the research, but we can ask those questions. And we can ask the question, why do you think this is important? Is my life or my child's life in danger? You can even be so blunt as to say, are you recommending this just to save time? You can You can even, I know this is a really tricky thing to say, but you can bring up the liability thing. If you think that the doctor is just purely recommending, say, a C-section, just to be able to say, well, I did everything I absolutely could. And that's another thing to know. When a doctor gives you a C-section, even if they get sued, they get to say, I did everything I possibly could to support the health of the mom and the baby because I gave them a C-section. Because that's like the end all be all in intervention in regards to childbirth. So, and there's all different schools of thought on this, but typically a doctor gets more money as well when they do a C-section, which is not to say that if a C-section is recommended, it's always a bad thing. There are plenty of situations where cesarean births save lives. We are so lucky that that is an option, but sometimes it is encouraged when it is really not needed. So again, ask as many questions as you can think of. Don't be afraid to challenge your doctor. You have every right to say, I don't really feel comfortable with what you're recommending. I need more information. Or you can do the unthinkable and ask for a second opinion. You can say, is there another doctor that I can talk to? And they might get a little huffy about that, but it is your right to ask for a second opinion and to get a new doctor in there. And more than likely, they'll be in cahoots and on the same team, but you never know. I had a client who was recommended that she go into the hospital for monitoring because of just a little issue with her ankle. She fell, didn't hit her belly, and there was this whole issue about low amniotic fluid levels. And she had two different tests. One showed very, very low levels, and the other one showed that she was about normal. The doctor decided to be very conservative and say, the levels are a little bit low, you should be induced. She felt really uncomfortable with this, and she said no. She said, I'll come in and I'll be monitored, sure, but you cannot make me be induced for something that's kind of like arbitrary. The tests with amniotic fluids are notoriously subjective. It really depends on who's doing the ultrasound. It's really, really hard to tell. It's not something that should be ignored. I'm not saying that low amniotic fluid levels is like no big deal, but the test is iffy. So anyways, she was in the hospital for days and days and days being monitored. They kept recommending that she be induced even though she and the baby were perfectly healthy. And at one point, the doctor told her, if you don't follow my recommendations and get induced, you and your baby could die. Which I mean, any of us could die at any moment. There could be an earthquake right now and something could happen to me. She was so offended by the doctor telling her that she said that she fired him, essentially. And she said, I need somebody new. And the birthing gods were looking down on us because there was a midwife on his team who was amazing. And she came in and man, she was like a rock star. She was so kind, very intuitive. But even her, when the mom said, you know what, like, everything really looks fine from what everybody's told me, like, I'd like to go home. And the midwife was honest. She said, because of liability, I cannot legally recommend that you go home. And of course, the mom, she could have just signed herself out, but the nurse was honest. She's like, I can't recommend that. Even if she felt like that was probably the best thing for the mom, if the mom went home and something happened, then the midwife could potentially be responsible because she said, yeah, you're fine to go home, when maybe she wasn't. So there's a lot of gray areas here. You really have to follow your intuition. I'm not telling you at all not to listen to your doctor or not follow the recommendations, but I'm saying ask lots of questions, follow your intuition, and if you really feel like you can't trust a doctor or they are being very incredibly unkind and making you tense and tight, conditions that are not conducive to labor, you can ask for somebody else. And same with nurses. If you have a nurse that's making you uncomfortable, you can request a different nurse. And I know this isn't easy to do. I know that especially for people pleasers like myself, this is like a nightmare to think that we have to fire a doctor or ask for a different nurse, but it can make all the difference in your birth experience. So Do your own research, look into, you know, the issues around legal liability for doctors. I have a lot of sympathy for them. They have to deal with a lot, but keep that in mind as you are making choices during childbirth. If you have any questions about this or any other questions about pregnancy, childbirth, early motherhood, go ahead and email me at the email below and I'll answer them on this video series.